Good morning, grade 9. Today we are going to start lesson 3, protists. We mentioned before viruses, lesson 1, and lesson 2, bacteria. When we spoke about bacteria, we mentioned bacteria are prokaryotes. And we mentioned prokaryotes mean no nucleus. No nucleus. But protists are eukaryotes. This second type. Eukaryotes means the genetic material contained in a nucleus. Protists are eukaryotes that cannot be classified as animals or plants or fungi. So protists has its own kingdom. Yes? Eukaryotes means cells in which genetic materials is contained in a nucleus. Okay, miss. Number 1, from the properties of protists. Number 1, most protists are one-celled organisms, means unicellular, like bacteria. So the common properties between protists and bacteria, protists, some or most types of it are unicellular, and bacteria are unicellular also. Yes, but some types of protists are multicellular. Number 2, from the properties of protists, and are common also between bacteria and the protists, some are heterotrophs and some are autotrophs. Yes, and the others are both. Number 3, from properties of protists, cannot move while others zoom around their habitats. Yes, we have 3 main categories of protists: animal-like protists, plant-like protists, and fungus-like protists. Yes, animal-like protists means plant protists like animal. When we speak about animal, I know all animals are heterotrophs. Also, animal-like protists are heterotrophs. When we speak about animal, the animal move to get food, and also animal-like protists can move to get food. And the main group or main phylum in animal-like protists that move to get food, protozoans. So when we speak about animal-like protists, I mean protozoans. This is important scientific term, protozoans. Yes, but animal-like protists not like animal. In what? Some types are unicellular, but all animals are multicellular. But some types in animal-like protists are unicellular. Yes. Number 2, our second category, plant-like protists, are autotrophs. Yes, this is second category of protists. We mentioned before or in the previous part, some or most protists are heterotrophs and some are autotrophs. Yes, so this is second part of protists. Plant-like protists are autotrophs, which means the group that can make its own food. Yes, plant-like protists equal algae. So the main phylum or main group in plant-like protists, algae. Yes, some of algae are unicellular and some multicellular. Yes, and algae use pigments to capture sun's energy. So not all algae are green. Some algae are red, some algae are brown, some algae are orange, and so on. Use pigments to capture sun's energy. Third category, fungus-like protists, are heterotrophs, no autotroph. Okay, all fungus depend on other organisms to get food. Fungi is a plural of fungus. Fungus means one fungi or singular, and the plural fungus, fungi. So all fungi are heterotrophs, fungi like protists. No, I mean fungus like protists, the protists that like fungi, yes, are heterotrophs, have cell walls and use spores to reproduce. Fungus like protists equal molds. The phylum or the main group of fungus like protists, molds. Okay, miss. Move to first category, animal like protists, protozoans. We have 4 groups in protozoans. When we speak about protozoans, I mean animal like protists, which means animal like protists. The protists behave like animal. Yes, the protists behave like animal. This is protozoans. The first group of protozoans. Firstly, protozoans are classified according to the way they move. Protozoans, 4 groups, classified according to the way they move. Why, miss? Because the first group called protozoans with pseudopods. What I mean by pseudopods, I mean false feet. The group that move with pseudopods, sarcodines. What is sarcodines, miss? Sarcodines are first group of protozoans. Move and feed by pseudopods. So the pseudopods or false feet used for movement and also used for searching food. Okay? Use the pseudopods to get food and move. Pseudopods form from what? From cytoplasm. Look at this blue area, this is cytoplasm. When cytoplasm flows toward one location, look, it makes this false feet, all these called false feet. Okay, false feet. These false feet called pseudopods. The sarcodines use these false feet to move and get food. Yes, these false feet formed from cytoplasm that flow toward one location. Look at 2 pseudopods trap a piece of food. Trap a piece of food like this, and this part or this piece enter the body of sarcodine. Sarcodine is a family. The member of this family, amoeba. Amoeba is a member in sarcodine. Amoeba belongs to sarcodines. Amoeba has contractile vacuole. What's meant by contractile vacuole? Look at this blue vacuole. This blue vacuole collects and expels excess water because amoeba live in fresh water. Yes, so it can collect a lot of water inside contractile vacuole that help it to float in water or swim in water. And when excess water fill the contractile vacuole, it can expel it out the cell. Yes, so the first protozoans that move with pseudopods, sarcodines, and the amoeba is a member of sarcodines. Okay, don't forget pseudopods, sarcodines, amoeba, and the contractile vacuole. Move to second group of protozoans that move with flagella. We mentioned before flagella in bacteria. Yes, web-like structure. Flagella, plural. One, called flagellum. Yes? So protozoans that move with flagella called the flagellates. So second group of protozoans, animals like protists, flagellates. The first group, pseudopods. Second group, flagellates. Flagellates are second group of protozoans that use web-like flagella to move. We mentioned, don't forget, we mentioned protozoans classified according to the way to move. So flagella, second way the protozoan move. One type of it lives in intestines of termites. Termites means نمل اللي هو النمل الأبيض. These creatures or protozoans lives in the intestines of termites to help it breaks down food into sugars. Yes, so this is very important information about flagellates. So flagellates help termites to help breaks down food, and in other way the flagellates help the termites help flagellate to protect it. Yes, to protect it. We have harmful flagellates. The first one that help termites in digesting and breaking down food, useful, maybe useful for termite. But we have other harmful flagellate, Giardia. Giardia that lives in the animal or human intestines, feed and reproduce, causing hiker diseases. Look at Giardia with two nucleus. Two nucleus. Yes, we mentioned all protists characterized by nucleus. Yes, eukaryotes. Giardia has two nucleus. Yes. Third way or third group, the protozoans move. Protozoans move with cilia. Cilia. Other way, the protozoans move. And this group that move with cilia called the ciliates. So protozoans with cilia are third group called ciliates. So group 1, pseudopods, group 2, flagellates, and group 3, ciliates. Ciliates are protozoan move with structures called cilia. What's meant by cilia? Hair-like projection. Look at the member of ciliates, paramecium. Paramecium. Look at paramecium cilia. Look at these cilia sweep. Sweep paramecium. Help it to move and collect food. Yes? So paramecium belongs to ciliates, has two contractile vacuoles and two nuclei inside its body. Yes? Two contractile vacuoles help it to collect also water, excess water, and expels excess water. Yes? And the two nuclei, first nuclei, help it to make instruction for the cell, and second nucleus help it in reproduction. Yes? Paramecia reproduce by binary fission or conjugation like bacteria. Yes, this is paramecium, member of the ciliates. Fourth group of protozoans that are parasites. Parasites means protozoans that characterized by the way they live. The way they live. Because we mentioned before, in case of virus, we mentioned virus depend on other living organism, which called host. Yes, enters the host and destroy the cell of host. This is parasites, also protozoans that are parasites. This is the way they live. The member of parasites or the member of protozoans that are parasites, plasmodium. Plasmodium. Okay, Plasmodium is a parasite, or the parasite, yes, is a protozoan that cause malaria disease. This disease infects the blood. The insect that transfer or spread the disease, yes, mosquito, and mosquito found in tropical area. The mosquito absorb blood of infected person, yes, and transfer it to another healthy one. So the disease transferred from one person to another, yes, and transfer the protozoan Plasmodium and causes malaria disease. Yes, so malaria disease caused by Plasmodium, that protozoan that are parasite. Yes, thank you all of you.